Hey everybody, it's Andrew and Dave. It's not Friday, it's Saturday. We had to we we got we got two dogs in here right now, and they're starting to have a little rumble with each other. So that I might have to address. But hope you're well, and if you're in the UK, we've had some unusually nice May weather. Are you going to attend to
Yeah, Stuffy. Come, boy.
Yeah.
Come.
These are
Out.
Romanian rescues, and we love them. So we really love them. But they have, like I always say, if you treat puppies bad, they're going to have some behaviors. So gaining wisdom, salutations, and Dean HD, lovely to see you, and nice to hear you and Sarah have been doing some work on the streets of Southend. I see an old. Oh, Hippie Shake is here. Hi. We were saying, we might not see Hippie Shake tonight because Saturday's Martin's night. Flatter Day Saturday, I guess, hasn't started yet. So it's lovely to have you here. Sven and Gaining Wisdom.
And Bon.
And Bon. Sister, lovely to see you. And thanks to Alex Michael for that opening solfeggio track. It was very pleasant, and hopefully, hopefully, you're not having to rush and be under a lot of pressure at the moment. Because I think, and Andrew will talk about this later, but the energy at the moment is interesting. And of course, we've seen in the world all the Pakistan, India stuff, which, it's all rumbling and bumbling, isn't it, in a certain direction. Oh, I don't really want to make any predictions. We went to a raw milk place today.
Well, first let's say we've had an amazing week of having our daughter with us, which is it's such an evolution because we've had to do lots of healing around that, and we are in such a wonderful place. So it was really good family time, and then we were taking her to be dropped off and happened to drive past a sign that said raw milk.
Yeah.
After we just did a little mission yesterday, didn't find raw milk but found organic A2 milk, which we bought anyway because we know that A2 is good, and even if it's lightly pasteurized, it's better than
homogenized.
Yeah, the supermarket stuff, and of course with what is it called that they Bovar.
I mean, I don't know if it's in all of them, but the lady we spoke to today, whose dairy herd we got milk from, she said they'd been incentivized. I didn't ask her how, but to take on Bovar, and they were selling to Arla. And they were grumbling. She was grumbling. I learned a lot of stuff today from this lady. She said we were being paid 22p a litre, and the stuff that you get in the supermarket, what did she call it? White water. Stripped of all of its natural the fats and the goodness. And then she was getting 22p a litre, and Arla weren't willing to keep her. What breed are they? Jersey cows. They were just like all mixing it all together.
Yeah, they didn't want to just give her Jersey.
It's got a unique price point because of its
so
quality.
They were just
the quality
mixing
of
it all
milk.
up.
And then she had basically, during the lockdowns, her business was really pumping. People were using her services a lot. She has a little shop.
A farm shop, yeah.
Yeah. And then this milk dispensary. Post lockdowns, like most of these little village shops, people have gone back. We have gone back to, the cheaper, more convenient shopping, which obviously we know is sometimes far less healthful. So it was nice to be able to support her. She had only just on the 4th, what's today, the 11th, 10th. So a week ago, she'd opened back up again after 6 months of closure because DEFRA, which is the UK's sort of
Well, she said it's the only testing.
yeah,
lab.
but it's the government's agency, isn't it, for farming and stuff? And of course, we know that they're playing the whole chicken flu stuff, bird flu.
Well, they're playing the
virus
game,
you know,
yeah.
and that everything. And this is not the first time we spoke. In fact, the farm we spoke to yesterday said we've stopped selling the milk from our dairy direct. We do it through shops now since CV. There's all
just
sorts
because
of
it's so complicated.
yeah,
now,
all
so
sorts
much
of
paperwork.
additional paperwork and licensing and hoops and whatnot. And this lady was almost, a little bit, almost, tearful in a way today, talking about how she'd been on the verge of not continuing. But only a week ago, she'd finally gotten the green light. They'd taken 4 of her cows to, they said, they got TB, or we're testing them for TB, we're sure there's TB. They take them, they destroy them, they check all their meat and whatnot, and they find there's no TB in them. And she's finally, and it takes them a few weeks to drag their heels and say, okay, you can open up now, even though, the test has proven there's no TB on your farm. And even them, she's like, well, we don't really, we're not sure about these blood tests. Now, us farmers, we don't really trust that.
Although she mentioned a farm that's just had 3,000. Oh no, it was chickens.
Those were chickens that were culled, but we've heard a few stories, and I'm sure you might have as well, of flocks and flocks and flocks of birds here in the UK, and I believe in America too, which is why they had an egg shortage for a while. And there is just, it seems like a never-ending assault on these things. And she said, and this is from the farmer's mouth, the lady's mouth herself. She's like, I've got friends who've gone for the Bovar trial and they've lost cattle. Cattle have died.
And they're claiming that it doesn't transfer through the milk, but we know, as as human
we've heard safe and effective before, haven't we?
But also we know that if you're breastfeeding, you can't have whatever you eat and drink is definitely going to transfer. And it's I don't see how it's any different
to
with
the
any
milk
mammal,
in the cow.
any animal. Yeah,
that we're not going to get that through the milk supply. That really took me by surprise. That actually there's been. This is what, and they're not. I mean, we think that she actually took needles in 2021. Actually, we didn't ask, but there was a sense that although they know that this elements of the system that are working against the people and the food security of the country, which I think applies in many countries and not unique to the UK. But this food security thing is being sort of decimated, and the war on the farmers is, detrimental to society and so on. Obviously, it's a stretch for them to realize that this is being done on purpose to create an absolute dependency on the corporate supply chain, and in so doing, a dependency on somewhat toxic food supply, which leads you to requiring somewhat toxic medical intervention.
I think that we left with with 2 things. One, unfortunately, they're still fighting the system and wanting the system to change. And she said herself, we've been protesting for a year and nothing's changing. And then also just like the sense of, we need to start to, if we haven't already, get out in the community and find suppliers, support small businesses, put money in good people's hands, and even if it's just one thing that you can swap out and find locally, maybe a group of you, our friend Simon in Norfolk, he goes and he gets for 5 people when he goes, and then they take turns. So yeah, it's just about sort of shifting from those big suppliers, which we know don't farm ethically anyway.
And by the way, a little bit of research on the A2, you find that they've done studies that dairy intolerant or milk intolerant folks using A2 milk do not have a change in their condition. They don't get it. That it doesn't kick it off. So, and I really believe that. I really believe that a lot of the intolerances are because of the way the produce has been finished. We know that we were talking about. I saw Karen from the Sun and Moon family just yesterday, actually, or day before yesterday, and she was saying about oils again, and rapeseed oil is something that she kind of used a lot. But although rapeseed is fine, it's how they heat press it and finish it that is damaging the structure of it. It's a little bit like microwaving your food.
It's also the seed. I think it's already been tampered with right from seed all the way through. And unfortunately, we were talking about this earlier too, weren't we? That we're not getting our minerals from our fruit and vegetables because the soils are completely, well, they're farmed then with pesticides, with GMO, and so the soil is no longer got that mineral element that then is obviously nourishing the plant, and then also requires us to be in farming situations where there is the whole ecosystem. There's that regenerative element, which you can't have in big crop monoculture.
No, because once upon a time, Bon, people would have just walked down to their local herdsman, like your hubby, and gone, we need 5 liters a week or something, and then they'd be able to just squeeze it out and go, there's your 5 liters, and that's what I had a little bit of as a child, but because we're so remote from these things, and I guess what Bon is saying is that like finding a farm near to where we live, there are. And I don't unfortunately have a reference for it now, but there is a website, or there's probably more than one.
There's a couple.
But there's a few websites of that are collections of people. There's one that's going around at the moment. Is it to do with the top hat farmer? What's his name? No. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But you can definitely find online, sources or resources for that. Of course, this isn't the first. In fact, it's probably the third or fourth farmer we've spoken to who's complained about how testing has cost them. Well, there's definitely been 2 or 3 who've no longer been able to do it because they just couldn't meet the testing criteria. And if you fail a test, it's months and money to return to business. And all that time, your customers have gone somewhere else. They're not using your services, all the machinery that you got that's meant to be delivering and whatever, all of that's sitting just like this lady, for months her stuff had to sit idle because she hadn't passed a certain test.
I mean, we're lucky because we mostly choose to be more rurally anyway. So, but Dave is really good about being out in the community and talking to people. So, recently we asked a lady who sells eggs and about sourcing grass-fed, organic, but not necessarily that it has to have the stamp. Just that it's being reared in the way that we would prefer, and of course she did. So we were able to go and source that. So I think it is about word of mouth. It is about a community, sort of getting out there and just trying to sort of dig and find it. Because unfortunately, with the raw milk, is there are also people that will supply it, but they do it kind of on the hush. They don't make a big song dance out of it because they don't really want to attract all of the. I mean, I think they have to test anyway, so it's not like you can get away with not. But
well, we as hippie used to drink fresh and treated milk from the cow, and no, of course. I mean, it never even came up. Like I remember drinking as a youngster warm milk, that had only seconds earlier, left the cow. Obviously, things can get, feces and stuff like that. If the farmer's, not on his game or something, there are times when something like that can go wrong. But you see, what they'll do is that happens by once, and then your whole business is slated. As I was saying to this lady, like if I was using you and your product was making me unwell, then I wouldn't come back. And your incentive to provide me with a product, this is a no-brainer. Most everybody, I know that in business there are people who are charlatans, but most everybody would. I'm just thinking about people who would like take basically water and just put powders and stuff together to make it look like milk and sell you milk. But no, most farmers are proud of their herd or their product, right? But nowadays, most farmers, just like most doctors, are not beating to dancing to the tune of nature. They're dancing to the tune of Bayer and Monsanto and all these and the banks.
Our friend Francois would talk about that in depth, won't he? Because it got to the point where it wasn't really about farming. It was about what the control systems were telling him to do because they were lending him the money. So.
Well, as Nathan says, Rothschild ordered milk to be pasteurized in the UK from 1946. You see, it's been so longer than most of our, if not all of our lifetimes, that the whole game has been, manipulated towards a particular end. Is it simply just to weaken us? Is there something else to it? It's a fascinating one, and Nathan's saying there's a big olive oil scam going on too. Well, I'm aware that like a lot of the olive oil you can buy in the supermarket is, not as high a grade or as highly healthy as we believe. You've got to really seek out like a good quality, and apparently it should be in glass and blah blah blah. I don't know if there's more to
glass as well. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, leave my rights alone. Yeah, I think we should. I mean, we're of the mindset that. I mean, it's not like you should, but I think that it has certain enzymes and properties that are nutritious. In terms of, there's two parts to it. A lot of people feel like, well, the modern farming practices are pretty barbaric, and the way that the cow and its calf are treated are horrendous. So we don't support that. What we are, calf to foot preference. So the cow and its calf never need to be separated other than for practical reasons during milking or whatever. Hey Nathan, Memorial Gardens. So we don't see a problem with it. I mean, the same is true with meat. We think that meat is an essential.
But
thing
we
for us.
respect that there are some people that choose, and I'm all about choice.
Yeah.
So if you consciously are choosing that that's not for you, then then that's.
But yeah, I mean, one of my touchstones when it comes to thinking, what is the moral right thing and so on, and what is sensible, other than from this idea that we are omnivorous. That when I was a youngster doing my national service, I spent almost a year on the border of Namibia or Southwest Africa and Angola, and somewhere I spent 3 months in Angola, but that's another story. But this story is more about how we had to spend time talking to the desert people. There are people living goat herding and stuff like that they've done forever, since the mud flood or whenever. And they use the milk. They use the goat and its milk, and the cow. I would say yes. Namibia, Namibia. We used to call it Nam actually, Namibia. But now they call it Namibia now, or Southwest Africa.
Namibia. It used to be Southwest Africa. I mean, it's a German. It was a German.
Yeah, the Germans had it from like the late 1800s. They'd kind of snagged it. They got Luderitz and Wolfers Bay and all this. These German names.
It's a big mining place too, isn't it?
Yeah, and a big mud flood place in my opinion.
Beautiful place.
Very beautiful. And it's on the southern part of Africa, southern Africa, just above South Africa and just below Angola. It's, I think, meant to be the world's oldest desert, that Kalahari Desert.
Yeah, look up Namibia desert or sand dunes. The pictures are phenomenal.
Well, and they've got something called Skeleton Coast in Namibia, which is famous for all these shipwrecks that are scattered in the dunes of well in from the water. And for someone like me who theorizes over things like a possible mud flood or a rising of the land or a falling of the land, it also adds to that idea. Thanks, Hippie, for the Patreon support. I actually should have a quick shout out to my one and only Patreon at the moment, which is JT. So I don't know that he's here. He's in Texas time. So
Texas time, and he's got young children and a little baby.
And a little baby. So hope that's all going well for you, bro. So yeah, fear doesn't work on the dead. Well, I mean, fear can cause death, my friend. Yeah, because that's what we think. This is what's being used to control people is fear.
Can I give a perspective on fear?
Oh, go on, my love.
Fear is normally a nervous system thing, and if you have fear, because your nervous system is essentially, it's my rod and staff protect you, the vagus nerve, is like there's a threat. And when we are in fear, then we'll automatically go into, I think it's parasympathetic. I might be wrong. I always get those two words. There's sympathetic and parasympathetic. Yeah. But you go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And actually what the body does is it then will go, it will sort of release inflammation in the particular area if it's unwellness, but just generally. And of course it then releases whatever mast cells it needs to, whether it be cytokines, whether it be histamine, those are the sort of soldiers that are like, there's a threat. In fact, I was talking today about the whole mask thing, and we've looked at it from a perspective of, it didn't protect you against anything, but actually what did it do? And we know that what that did was, one, that sort of gag feeling is there's a problem, and so the body the nervous system will react, and then also even seeing it, what the body registers is there's a problem, and what our mind does is our mind is constantly scanning. It's like this hypervigilant scanner, just checking for anything familiar and essentially danger. That's what the ego's there for. It's meant to, and the nervous system. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is, we need dysregulation, because sometimes we need to freeze, sometimes we need to fight, sometimes we need to run, and sometimes we just need to smile our way through it. So those things are necessary, but we end up staying in them. And of course, I think during the last 4-year experience that everybody went through, that constant sort of drip of fear and death and whatever, and seeing masks and isolation and all the media and all that scaremongering, people would have naturally been in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and as a consequence would have had an inflamed system, which then, of course, if you tested,
we've speculated strongly that the whole because there was a little bit of a spike, and it's hard to be exactly sure, because we know that some people were bumped right out of hospital and put into care homes, and that was the worst thing for them, and then they were putting people on ventilators, and all sorts of things were happening. But this cytokine storm, or this kind of like mast cell activation based on your own state of mind, i.e. the trauma that you're feeling, then I am conjecturing that in a town of 10,000 people, one of those people will be so frightened and be just at that right tipping point that can kick that person off the bucket. And
I'd say more than that.
Yeah.
I think because I think people went into it already in that position. Then you add another layer on, and you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm just speculating on the number. The number is really, the point is more that in a population of 60 million or wherever you live, that, you know, to have 1 in 10,000 added to the number, that was all they needed actually. Because I remember doing the numbers back in the day. You know, I think it was like 1 in 10,000 extra over the last 5 years on average versus 2020. And so there was a little number, a little bubble up, but it wasn't huge. But it was but sometimes you heard people tell the story about someone who was fairly well, you know. I know there's all the other cases, but there's someone, you hear these stories, they were fairly well, and then all of a sudden they went into a very bad state, and then of course they were handed over to the state, and that was the worst thing for them.
Yeah, and actually interesting, if you have the 20% of the population apparently have mast cell activation syndrome, but we all have mast cell activation, and one of the biggest healing elements of that is your nervous system. So it just shows how important that is, and so that's why fear is such an incredible tool, is something that we all experience, and we all have, in my opinion, have unprocessed fear from very, very young that sits in your kidney or your bladder, and you know, it doesn't take much for them to, again, mind is looking for anything that's familiar, and so they use certain terms and phrases, and yeah, you can quite easily, you know, I think even with, if we go back to the raw milk and the food security, you know, that is such a big deal for people. You know, not having enough, or not being able to feed their family. You know, you can understand how that could send someone also into a panic or fear. In fact, you know, we can all say that when, you know, to some degree, when we were in the last 4 years, there was an element of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It certainly was for us, you know, until you were able to take a moment and reflect on it. So,
speaking of reflecting, Sven, I hope you had a lovely time with your daughter. We've obviously just enjoyed having our daughter for a week, and so I hope it was good, and that there's more of those opportunities in the pipeline. Yeah.
So I'll do my little Andrea astrology forecast, if that's okay.
Do you want to look at the?
We can do, because it's always, if anybody's interested, then it's easy. It's good to see, because you can start to understand. So this is my chart again, because I don't mind people seeing my chart.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So of course the most important part is the green around the side. That's the transiting. So this is where everything's transiting. I've got on whole sign. That's another conversation about how the wheel looks, or how it's read. But you of course have the houses that represent different areas of your life.
People can't see your finger.
Sorry, different area. The 1 to 12 different areas of your life. You know, again, that's a really in-depth way of looking at it, but we want to focus on these, and in particular where this moon is. The moon is in the last degrees of Libra. It happens to be in my 11th house. It would be different for everybody else. Dave's Libra first house. So it's just leaving that, and it's going to be full around this, which is Pallas Athena, I think. Is that Pallas Athena? Let me just check. No, it's Juno. And Juno is the house of is the spiritual point of long-term committed relationships. So it's also going to conjunct that. But more importantly, it's the full moon is in Scorpio. So the reason I presence that's on the 12th, I think early morning of the 12th, early hours of the 12th, certainly in the UK. And so this moon is an introspective one. Your Scorpio is that shadowy, intuitive, emotional, what's hidden in the shadows. So it's an introspective one. In fact, if there's been something sort of boiling up, that's probably going to show itself with this full moon. The full moon is also going to be in opposition to Taurus, because they oppose each other, to Taurus, but in particular Uranus, which is here. And by then we'll also have the sun moving closer. So that is, Uranus is the awakening, but it's also change, sudden change. So expect something could shift in your life. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was, I think I mentioned this last week, is where Aquarius is here, which is in my third house of communication. We have Pluto, and you can see there's a little R over there, which means Pluto is now in retrograde, and it's going to retrograde only to 1 degree, but it's retrograding here. And Pluto, if you're up for it, is inviting you to go deep.
This is important, yeah.
It is inviting you to go deep and look at what's hidden. I say he because he's the masculine archetype. To go and look at where you are still feeling powerless, because Pluto is all about your standing in your power. So there's a deep dive, and it's particularly in Aquarius. So Aquarius is your uniqueness, it is your freedom, it is community, it's technology. I believe when they talk about Aquarius, they're talking about more about our own technology, but also obviously it's as within, so without. And then of course it's opposing anything that you will have in Leo, which for me obviously is quite prominent because I have Venus and Mercury that it will be kind of in opposition with. So it'll be sort of going into that areas for me. But this is for everyone. I mean, obviously it's a collective energy, so we might see stuff that's hidden in the collective around the Aquarian energy be revealed, or acts that can be revealing if you choose to see, or you have the eyes to see. So that's an important one, and it's there till October. So it's, Pluto's death and rebirth and transformation. So it's a real invitation for that to be, for you to use that energy. And the Scorpio full moon, the Scorpio full moon. In fact, all of astrology, it's meant to kind of expand us. It's meant to invite us to our highest path. So there you go.
Well, I'm I'm constantly surprised at the connections with events and the astrology and so on. And
personal ones too, right? Because we'll have a day and then and then we'll reflect on it, and it's interesting how it's so on point.
And so the astrology, I think I wanted to say, I saw Nathan had squirreled in here, and I know you got a house move coming up, or maybe that's already happened, but that's interesting about the death and rebirth, because it's not like death and obviously this life will have a death, but the letting go of things and the moving on of something else, through something, and the letting go of a behavior or a pattern, that's part of that. And we need not be scared of death, because what is on the other side is amazing.
Yeah, endings are new beginnings, and when we allow something to let something go, then it allows something new to be reborn, or to come into our space. I'd be interested, Nathan, actually to know when your house move is, because I think that the Uranus-Taurus thing might be lined up with your house move, so it would be interesting to know what date that is, and for us to cross-reference it. It's not to be afraid, and of course this was what I wanted to bring to this session, was this we get so, and understandably, we're so fixed on what's happening materially, within our body, within our small personal space in the world. There's a real focus on material. And of course, we're having this human experience and we're in this realm of where things become matter. But I suppose I just wanted to remind us that actually everything is energy and everything is frequency. And so, for me, that's why astrology I just kind of so connected to it, because it's that's what it is for me. There's this energetic relationship going on,
and we know that they did the old 432 440 switcheroo with the music, right? So when we're talking about milk, we know that they've done a switcheroo with the vibration, the frequency of the milk, and thanks to Pasteur and Rockefeller and all that.
So it's nature always trying to find its harmony through energetically, through frequency. It's trying to find harmony.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the energetics of the sky are guiding us to try and find that beautiful dance and harmony. I said to Dave today, why does it matter that if there is the globe or not? And for me, it's when it's a solid ball, then there's limitation. And I suppose when we're able to be in flow of our own energy or frequency, and for me, it's not about saying any one of our sort of energies or in particular emotions are bad. It's just about allowing it to move. I think grief is important as joy, and the different seasons are relevant. So for me, it's just about allowing it to be in surrender of it, and being in flow of it. Same with death and rebirth and endings and beginnings. But just a reminder that we are that. And I was also reminded of, which we haven't yet had a chance to listen to, a podcast where they were saying we can get very focused on what the world is doing, in terms of the theatre of it, but actually to remember that there is behind the scenes a massively energetic experience going on, and the sort of nefarious forces are using our or manipulating our energy, particularly if we are still not connecting to how incredibly magnificent we are in terms of our energies, and actually what we are creators. So
this is one of the hardest and most significant probably elements of this whole journey, is to really walk into that, become that, emanate that truth about the divinity that is the spark that we carry. Or that's we are generations down the line of panel beating the heck out of us, and so for me, knowing what I know about it, or believing the elements that I know about it, I still know that it's like a daily thing, and it will possibly never be like, and maybe it's not meant to be, but it's, and the reason I'm saying that is because I'm just trying to be encouraging of, it's mostly men who listen to my channel. Zizi got me to look at my analytics the other day. I never bother with all of that. And 80-something% men. So it is what it is. But but I know what we lack, and I know that what, on average, what truthers are like, we are very much in our kind of lefty brain, screw the system, and it's all, shit out there. I'm obviously generalizing here. And while I'm doing that, I should also say hello to Rob Hughes. Rob Hughes, I saw his comment, was from an old guard, and he watched us in do Europe, and the FE tour in Europe. So Sven's in the chat.
It's been quite a journey.
We're still in touch with some of them.
Yeah.
All of them, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's kind of doing their thing.
We're hoping. In fact, Jason Disbury was in the chat last week.
Yeah.
I think so.
And actually, he showed a lot of interest in going to Spain, didn't he? To
Alex Michaels.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, that's the first time I met Alex Michael.
Yes.
Bloody worst day of my life that was. Bloody hell. No, it wasn't because you brought Mike along. Stellium 7. Anyway.
That was actually such a cool little interval in our fairly chaotic, hectic month. Just to kind of be in Spain and chill and listen to singing and chat and whatever. It was have a good meal. It was an awesome pit stop.
Yeah. That was and we did a little singing with Alex as well, and Lisa did some singing with him, which was cool. It was kind of surreal in a way, but the whole thing was. So hey ho, nice to see you here, Rob. And he's obviously, it's taken a while to find us. I don't know when we dropped off your radar, but we did South Africa. We tried to set up something in South Africa. Ended up being that we were doing street activism for a while along the beachfront, helping homeless guys predominantly, talking to them, stuff like that. And then come like Christmas of 2021, I'm in full steam, like flyering people along the beachfront and telling them not to take the needles and blah blah blah, and I lost the channel due to medical information. So that was just all of a sudden gone overnight, at around Christmas, New Year of 2021. So we've been on a slow build, and guess what? Zizi said to me yesterday, he's like, we should set a challenge to get your channel to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And so we're going to endeavor to do that, Rob. So nice to have you.
Yeah.
And if anyone sees any of my content that is share worthy, feel free to share it to generate some ad revenue from YouTube. Okay, I'm not monetized. You need to, and sure Alex knows this, you need to have hundreds of thousands of views a month for the payment from YouTube to be worth noticing, I think. Anyway, so that's that. Always knew you guys spoke the truth. Completely changed my lifestyle. My grown-up daughters, both at NHS, now agree with life like we see it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm so happy for you, Rob. That's heartwarming.
It makes it worthwhile. I mean, we still feel it's worthwhile, but it really helps to hear.
Thanks, man.
The people resonate.
And actually, that now you bring that up, that actually has been just my intention was really just to say whatever is that I see, and obviously at times it's uncomfortable because people are very sensitive about certain things in religion and all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's been a journey in that respect for us too, to kind of allow people who are not ready or choose not to just allow them and love them anyway.
Singe man, non-television watching non-news believers. I wanted to say, Rob, we actually just as you won't know this, but the Global Eye tour for us was pretty much November of 2019. That month, October had been our first month homeless, and we haven't had a home since that time. So in all of these nearly 6 years now, we've been on the move.
We haven't, but we are now in the position where we choose the lifestyle we want rather than we are forced to have this lifestyle. And we sit often, and yesterday was one of those days, and just take it all in. How grateful we are. we have been able to, or we're in the process of creating the life that we desire and choose. And has that been uncomfortable at times because we've had to do uncomfortable things and feel uncomfortable things? Yes, absolutely. But I think that's just how it is. We don't create change when things are too comfortable.
Well, that's right, and I think that in my case, I was too comfortable. And so being pushed out of that has forced a particular, direction and sort of made life a downside more interesting than sitting at home watching Netflix.
Man, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm excited about life and the possibility, and in fact I was reminded today about Kelly Brogan. It's like we can focus so much on all the things that are wrong and forget about all the exciting possibilities and the good things in our life, even if they are just a really small thing that you just take a moment to appreciate.
Rob, by the way, has 14 chickens unregistered in his garden, which is as it should be. And he tries to share in his community, and that's absolutely awesome. And we love the fresh eggs, man.
Yeah,
so
we're lucky.
We're in Lincolnshire again. We ended up spending quite a while in Lincolnshire. I don't know if you knew that after the Globe Light Tour. Anyway, that's fantastic. So thanks very much. So Nathan had asked about the passing of YouTube CEO. Yeah, I mean, she's the lady who was in 2018 talking to Congress about putting the little banners up and steering people away from flat earthing. I don't obviously wish this suddenly and goes awayly on anyone really. It's I don't feel smug about it at all. In fact, now that I think about it, I saw a the Dr. John Campbell guy who was pushing people to take the needles in 2021, and now he, in horror and honesty, he's having to start to face up to the truth. And it's so he does these he'll only publish stuff, or he'll only talk about stuff that has been published, like peer reviewed or in a journal or in a newspaper or whatever. So he steers clear of anything that's conspiracy.
Until he came up against seeing RFK talk about the chemtrails.
Oh yeah, when RFK.
And he was like, I thought that was a conspiracy, but clearly it's not.
Now, if RFK talking about anyway, but this one was where he was a medical journal, particularly a cardiology medical journal, had done an extremely well researched, detailed study, and came to the conclusion that they should pull the mRNA completely. The number of unalived suddenlies, but particularly in the 20 to 40-year-old male, because myocarditis, because their focus was on heart-related stuff. There's obviously all the other areas which we know, turbo this and speedy that. So it was a very, very clear and unequivocal, well-researched, had all the data. Millions of people had been evaluated for this this information. The unV'd were unbelievably better off in terms of future well-being, blah blah blah. And I watched it one in the early morning this week, and I felt compelled to send it to my family, and of course you have to face the deafening wall of silence where none of them will want to acknowledge, and possibly even if they were to watch it, they probably wouldn't watch it. And if they did watch it, they'd still find some reason to go, that's just he's just yeah.
But we do know that if you don't mind me saying, that part of you needing your family to acknowledge it is also very old. It's an
Yes.
old need to be
Yeah.
validated and
Yeah.
say you're valuable, what you say is valuable, it's appreciated. And that's very old. And that was your opportunity to see something
Yeah.
that was still living there.
Yeah,
Because
and in a way, it's like, how do I make me feel? You're laying down your stuff. Some people are being rude about it. If you're in town, speaking when Dean was in town again.
But this is particularly your father and your sisters. So it means more because you want that.
It means more, but what Andrea talks about this a lot, and others, that our perception of the hierarchy of the government, of religion, and so on is oftentimes a reflection of a rapport we had with our carers, our father, our mother.
Or your original authority.
Yeah. So a lot of us who are in the outrage department, we are possibly operating out of just like my feeling of my family's rejection of my truth. Thanks, Rob Hughes. I appreciate that. But my family, and this is not, I'm not unique, so I'm not like woe is me. I know we're all pretty much most of us are in the same boat, but it's awesome that your daughters are getting on in rowing. I think we have to, we get these, we have this interaction with the government or with the status quo because, in part, because of our childhood experiences. And so in a way, if you think beyond, imagine if you were the expression of God and your higher self actually went, okay, I'm going to curate an incredible, hard to believe, but I'm going to create an incredible experience, a set of experiences for you, which are going to bring this thing to the fore, to bring this thing for you to cure. You know how, like, we all agree that the CV stuff of 2020 really helped to wake a lot of people up, right? Well, this is why perhaps these things are happening for us, is that they're designed to, well, keep you asleep or give you that opportunity to wake up.
Yes, and to heal and take your power back, because codependency is when we give our power out to the outside to keep us safe, to to take care of our needs, whatever, and that we can see we've all done that, but that starts very, very young. You do that with mommy and daddy, right? When you have an experience, and sometimes very, very subtle experience, like, oh no, I need for them to be pleased with me or not disappointed in me. And of course that then is repeated in society and in religion and in obviously our parents at school.
So yeah, we actually get into relationships either in business or in life or whatever, that are there. They end up being like these teachers, like this lady at the milk shop today, at the farm. She was receiving certain lessons, I think, from, but it's where she's at. I mean, would I love that she could just freely, and maybe she finds her way to having a PMA. I didn't mention that to her. I should have said so. Set up a PMA.
Although she's still at the point where she wants the government to change, and I think for me that's where there's the trauma bit, because actually the resentment that she holds is, I truly believe, is very young, and it's not that doesn't absolve whoever on the outside is doing something, but you respond to it in a different way. If anything, you say, well, no, I'm not going to participate, or no, I do not consent, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think Hippie was saying about all this nonsense making the sun dark is designed to wake up people. I agree that, like, this recent announcement in the UK, and I think they've announced it elsewhere, and of course in Florida and other places they've got these court cases going on, or rather they've banned or written papers to say we're not going to allow geoengineering. Well, I think there is that element of it, but wow, this system's so much in denial, and maybe this is part of them having to reveal the method, and tell us the truth. And if people don't stand up and say, well, no, then we've kind of given ourselves that. We've given ourselves that. So, yeah. So I mean, and of course, how much the chemming has happened over the last 10, 20, maybe longer years, right? And there's been so much denial, not a word, they'll just make up new stories about new types of clouds and steam turning into ice and then sticking in the air and becoming like a fan and opening up, and then the ripples that you get from the harp type stuff. No, I mean, it does, these things do wake people up, but the majority are to be deceived. And having worked in local government, I saw it firsthand how like they can take an event or an incident, and from that, because they're so risk averse in the and the people who tend to do well in these businesses are like super risk averse, right? Have we check this and check. So now something happens, and then they're like, okay, so to prevent this from ever happening again in the 400,000 people who live in this town, we're going to write a piece of paper that stops everybody from ever lighting a fire or doing a thing or whatever, right? And that's how we end up to a point where they're like, okay, so we had this someone got sick from the milk, and they sued Sainsbury's or Walmart or whatever for $5 million, and we need to make sure that never happens again. So how do we do that? And we end up creating. And I'm not saying there isn't intelligent design of a nefarious kind, but we end up creating the conditionality for our own, this Overwatch and this, show. I mean, the number of people that have Ring doorbells, and will agree to so many things now based on this, where we are, just where this societal kind of construct is, and I don't see how that can change, because there isn't really. I mean, COVID, people would like get together on a weekend and stand in the park in the UK, and most people I meet who are associated with that have gone, it's kind of petered out now. There's still a few of us that get together. Same is true with like the milk shop lady. Like the majority of people who came there using her as a trusted source of local, produce, have all gone back to the drawing. So, I'm not pessimistic. Don't misunderstand me. I'm really optimistic, but I'm also realistic and that I may have said this last week. That the necessity for it to be like utopia for everybody and all that kind of thing is like, no. We're in Shawshank prison. You ain't throwing those gates open. I saw Robert said he remembered some of our travails in 2020 when we landed in the hot spot in South Africa.
But you know what? I honestly,
what a important trial.
I now that I have gone and done the work, or doing the work, and of course now I have my astrology, and for me these were all lessons for us and teachers, and so gosh, I'm actually grateful for those experiences. They were really hard, really uncomfortable, but I now, realize that they have, what's the saying about the diamond? It needs.
It's created under pressure. That's the story, anyway. That coal is squeezed. Okay. Oh, actually, they can do that, can't they? They can crush coal.
Anyway, that wasn't the point. The point was always that through the eye of the needle kind of thing. So it was hard, and I'm sure everybody can talk about an experience that they've had in their life that was incredibly hard. But for us, we can now look back and see how important those were and how pivotal they were in our lives. So much so, and there was a question here. Right.
Genosuke Sama. That's not a name I remember from before, but nice to see you, and thanks for.
What are your thoughts of living in the UK for the next 5 years, opposed to Zanzi?
Zanzi.
South Africa has its major issues, but what do you think is long term best?
Well, I mean, like most people who listen to this channel live in the UK, so we've found some really nice places in the UK. Like the weather is pretty, it's not a highlight. So I do not write off the UK as a place. Obviously, the UK is like the center of one of the centers of the spider's web. So it feels like a place that's got more control. Although obviously the South African authorities are playing the game. They are part of the. They are sold out. I would choose South Africa over in UK. One, because space and the availability of land, weather, the opportunity to be productive and grow some own. That can happen in the UK, and that can happen in many other places. And of course, like Rob, if you've got 12 chickens, you're already starting to stand a little bit on your own 2 feet, right?
I think if you go to any country, they'll say our country has this and it's better over there. And I think that's relative to where you are personally, where you are, and the country and the messages you're getting. I truly believe if we are the change. And I also think it comes back to energetics and frequency, and even this thing called astrocartography, where energetically, there are places where we feel better, that we thrive, that offer us certain experiences. So there's that. But I honestly think that where we're aligned with our highest purpose and we're doing that deep work. I'm not sure it even matters where you are. I mean, you will obviously choose that there will be a preference to where you are. And of course, some people don't have a choice either about where they are. For South Africa personally, I felt such a good feeling about it. I felt that people were really resilient. South Africa's had to go through a really tough time. And as a consequence, they've got that fighting spirit. All the electricity issues, and whereas perhaps in the UK people are less resilient in that respect because they have had more resources, perhaps more opportunity. But everywhere we go, that country will say, but this thing's happening and that thing's happening. And so, I think there's hardship. What I would say for me personally about the UK is it's got a very Saturnian energy. And what I mean by that is Saturnian is like quite controlling, quite like, everything's like you have to be responsible, quite serious, quite conservative, there's a lot of big brother around.
Suit and tie.
Yeah. And, that's Saturn rules Capricorn, which is that, business-like, it's all very, whereas South Africa is kind of a little bit more Wild West, which obviously comes with its negatives.
South Africa, and I mean, I really have I don't know what it is, but I want to make a difference in the world. Like most of us, you want to shine a little light in your corner of the world. And I really felt like what happened in 2021 for us was, it helped me a lot. I don't know if you remember, Rob, but I had an event that happened to me in 2018 that really shook me to the core in a deep and profound way. It wasn't pleasant. and it really set me back. Even 2019 was hard for activism, and going on that tour, I was still working my way through that stuff. And what doing the activism in South Africa raw, and facing certain fears, because obviously I've also been impregnated with all the stories of gloom and doom, that happen in some of those communities. I was faced with, and I mean, we were, I had my back to the wall. We were like, we got no money for food. We got it. Maybe if I go and do some activism today, I'll get a little bit of support. And that worked. That helped. People were really kind and supported what we did, and that helped us a lot. And Francois got involved, and it helped us out. The farmer. So that's why for one of the reasons why I'd love to be back in South Africa is that because I feel like if I was on the land, I would be given the opportunity to, or I would make the opportunity to help develop people, young men, communities, be involved in that. I've got so much energy left,
Well,
I'm a young man.
with the luxury of the life that we've created, we have the flexibility to, with now both doing coaching, for instance, we've got the flexibility of being in multiple places, so we're not reliant on necessarily the economy of a particular.
Maybe if we're able, we talked about this. It would be awesome to have more than one base. So I'm gonna set myself up at Alex Michael's place. That'll be my Spanish base, and then maybe Tony Whitcomb there will be able to sort me out with something here in the UK. Or I'll just go and hang out with Rob and eat some of his eggs. Anyway, I'm just having a little bit of a laugh. Nice to see you, Tony. His trauma today was upgrading his car to a Bugatti, and then his alarm went off to wake up for the day. 3 McLaren F1s came past me in a little kind of queue the other day. That was quite a moment. See, Sven agrees with you there. I don't think it matters where you are. No, it cannot matter where you are necessarily. It's so important, I think, that we learn from the experience of 2020, where some of us, fled to the hills, and then we found that was a knee-jerk reaction that wasn't necessarily the right thing. For some people, it has maybe worked out just fine, but. And not only that is that we need to be where we are in a way, and we could exhaust ourselves running around the world like some of us did.
Some people like to explore, and
that's different. The exploring is different. It's more that we have energetic, natural places that we're meant to be, and of course, naturally, if you live in the ether of England, then the ether of England is going to feel far more. On average. And of course there are other, considerations. It's not like, if everybody got, dumped 20 million bucks in their bank account, people might make different decisions and go, what, we were up in North Wales recently, and there was some beautiful landscape there. And where we are here is really beautiful.
I think, the truth is you do create your own reality. And I think that unknowingly we have these stories that run blindly. I've mentioned this before, but I have to presence it because people don't know that they have it. And they're very young stories or belief systems. I can't have what I want, so sometimes there's resignation or apathy, or I can't have what I want, so I'm going to try extra hard, because if I try extra hard, I'm going to please extra hard, or whatever. So there's the I can't have what I want, or there's not enough, or I'm not enough. There's these things playing out which actually cause our energetic system to be limited and smaller, like in a box, and actually that's why the work's so important, because we're just not that. We are these the potential and the expansiveness that we have available to us is beyond what we can even fathom. But we are also shut down, as as a consequence of the experiences that we've had, and therefore, we're settling. Honestly, I think we're all settling, and of course it's a journey, and of course we're all unique and want different things, and and that's the beautiful part. But I suppose my message is like, do that inner work so that you can increase your capacity to be more open, to be more expansive, because there is, I truly believe, so much available to us, and we're only accessing like such a small bit. And I truly believe the matrix and the system wants you to be in that limited, which is why I think they've told us we live in a globe, because then that's it. There's nowhere to go. Oh yeah, we can try and take you to Mars, but of course that's almost impossible. And there's an asteroid that's going to come and get you, and the resources are running out, and yada yada yada. But actually, if we're in this infinite universe that is able to replenish and goes through expansion and contraction, then surely it's the same for us. So that's what I want to encourage. And we're always creating, whether we're creating from the limited position or from the expansive position, or whether we're creating with the outside world's messages or with ones of your true nature. There's this phrase, who would you be before the world told you who you needed to be? And I think that's a very important message, because at some point, very, very young, that we can't even remember, we were told we needed to be someone. And at that point, we start to become these limited beings.
Yes. I remember as a youngster in 1988 coming to England and then traveling across America. At one point, for a few months, I had a job in a pork pie factory, and I was like on a production line. This is, like just months earlier, I'd been on the front line of combat in Angola, and here I am knocking bloody pork pies out of a tray into another tray so they can have the jelly injected into them. And I became friends with some of the other youngsters there, and I guess I was 20, and I never forgot this conversation I had with this, because in South Africa, we kind of raised with this idea that, we sort of, they want you to fit into the kind of corporate class, and so that was, just kind of, in my thinking. And yet I met this guy. He was like, I said, so what do you plan to do with your life? He said, oh, I'll probably just work here in the pork pie factory. So there's my mom and dad sitting we were in the canteen, 100, 200 staff or whatever, and all eat lunch at the same time. And he's pointed out his mother or his father, I can't remember if it was both, but they've been working there all their life, and they're still wearing like the white hat, which meant you were like the worker bee, the other hats, the reds and blues and the greys or whatever, they were other management. And that the aspiration of that young lad was so stunted, and it made no sense to me, when I felt like, and then of course I went on and got myself eventually I got a corporate job in government, coming back to England in 94, and ended up being, just becoming that myself, where like that was being limited by or curtailed by a system that wants just, these little square boxes.
Well, I mean, even in the morning, most of us wake up and we're flooded with our already stories. I'm a mother. I'm Andrea. I'm a daughter. I'm whatever it is. And although you are those things, you're also so much more than them. I mean, from an energetic sort of creator electromagnetic point of view, you're not just those things. You are those things, but you're not. So there's a phrase, you're everything and nothing. So yeah, I mean, I think that's for me such an important aspect is our returning to retreat. And I think it's a lifetime journey. It's not like, oh, why haven't you done it already kind of thing. It's like it takes time. If it's taken this long to get us to the point where we're like, to unravel all of that or untangle all of that, and maybe not even in our lifetime do we see that, but I'm certainly around me. The people that I see around me, there are people who are doing that work, and so I know it's possible.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know, from the masculine point of view, it is one of the things that I think for us is maybe a little bit more a blind spot or more of a thing than it is for women. But maybe that's just me seeing it from my.
Can I share that? I think that's because the masculine still has healing to do, and I think that both the feminine and the masculine. We spoke about this last week. There has been such a thing done to the genders and their roles, and that all has to be healed. And we're moving into a lot of masculine energy. So I can see that those kind of things you have the opportunity. One being Saturn moving into Aries on the 21st of May.
And I think masculine energy can be like the puppies in a cage. The masculine energy can be, as it has been with the feminine energy. I think they've been really skewed away from their divine path. But the masculine energy is based. It has like all have an ego, and that can be used against you. And so, if this is going to come to pass, that your masculine prowess is going to be needed, are you in that? Have you got your ship in alignment such that when you fire off, you're not going to be, it's not going to be friendly fire and all over the place. And I think we do need the fire of testing. Like we did in the army, we had to drill and test these things so that we were so good at it. And I think this is an important part of this journey for the masculine, is to be honing your skill set and ensuring that your alignment is one of balance. Because when shit hits fan, are you going to operate from a place of strength, or are you going to just be some automaton that has been programmed by the TV? Now, Tony says, so I'll move on from that. Tony says he spent £750 on his car today with a decent audio system, as my new car stereo was shite. Money is least of my problems, but when I get it, I use it very wisely. That's why I donate a lot, and he has donated a lot, certainly to us. And I know with Flatsoid, you've been very generous and supportive there. Yeah, Squirrel had to go, I think. Are you still here? The male can be seen in female. They came first. Adam came from Eve, no doubt. Adam came from Eve. Well, so I mean, I think obviously we have this debate about chicken and egg. What's
It's
easy
easy,
quite a
yeah.
bit, and we're like, okay, so if the egg comes first, who raises it? So we, obviously it's one of those interesting discussions, and we
Well,
would
it's like
like to
Mother
suggest,
Earth, right?
yeah, that you have to have the mother before she can then throw a seed down, and then more animals come, or more, in this case, living mankind. Um, so so yes, maybe the Mother Earth is the birthing thing, but she does need, in order to. So we're probably saying the same thing. In order for that seed to become have the spark of life, it needs the L. It needs the magnet, needs the electricity, the electromagnet, or the magneto-electric experience. So the magnet, the the magma, the earth, is without form and void. And then L came upon the land, and so the light of the sky. It's interesting when you think about the blue red. Did I say this last week? But how it's like, the sky is Thor, and it's the thunder, and it's the masculine, and the mother is down here waiting for the strike, and then with that comes, the arc of new life. We were talking about how the protea in South Africa, the seeds will sit dormant in the soil for years until a felt fire, a bushfire comes through there, and the heat of that fire, and having cleaned all the brush away, the heat of the fire, and then these protea seeds can germinate. So it's a beautiful thing. So I like that, Squirrel, and Adam came first. I mean, like obviously everything's Adam, and and they all want Adam to have been the first, and all the religions have that kind of lineage. Although the Jews obviously they say it must be the
Well,
mother.
and also religion making the God in the sky is a man.
Well, that's the interesting. Well, that's the interesting thing, you see, because this, what I was saying was that the electricity, the masculine, the energy, the L is coming from the sky, but the mother is obviously the recipient. She's the cup for that force.
Well, interesting, in Chinese medicine, the earth element is the mother.
Right. So in one sense, it's true that the masculine energy is up there and the feminine energy is down below our feet, or at our feet, kind of thing, in Earth. And so when they talk about the Sky Daddy and all the dude up there in the clouds and whatnot, there is an element of possibly of truth of that. That's where the masculine energy comes from, and the feminine energy comes from beneath us, or that's represented by the earth, and she is the bearer of the seed.
When we're talking about the other day about the sort of triangle up and the triangle down, in terms of the feminine and the masculine, I think that's how they represent, if I'm not mistaken, in alchemy. I need to have a look it up. But I'll look it up, and I can bring it up next time. The alchemy symbols are the triangle up and down, I think, for the sun and the moon, if I'm not mistaken. But I might be wrong. I'll have to have a look at it.
Some things are beyond us to have an answer, Dave and Andrea. That's Tony. I mean, talking about sound systems, our sound system. We went through extreme rain one time a few months ago now, and heavy, deep puddles, probably some of the deepest, and a whole lot of water gushed up, probably into up the wheel arch or something. It's according to the mechanics, it must have been brought in by some kind of, there's like a particle cleanser or some bullshit, and it's blown it into some little boxy in the car, so we don't have any radio. And I was thinking about how, like, when we did the trip to Portugal in the truck in 2020 to Dan's, we didn't have music, And there was another vehicle we've had. Oh yeah, the original one, Zizi. When he was much younger, he'd put a coin into our CD player in the old Fiat, and so we didn't have music then, and we don't have music at the moment. And I was thinking, like, is this happening for me for a reason, so that I'm not listening to certain kinds of music? I mean, we do enjoy having music in the car when
Yeah,
we
and
do,
we were given an Alex Michael CD, so it's not like we can't listen to music.
Alex Michael, who's that? He makes music. He's having a party on the 20th or 21st of September this year, and we're going to be there. And a few other people are going to be there. So if you could be there, that would be awesome. You can let us know. You can send me feedback. I get a lot of feedback. I'm inundated with correspondence at the moment. Last time I said to the guys listening that I'm making a new poster. And what I wanted to
banner,
and what I wanted to look like is something like this, where
a little bit further away, you can't see it.
Earth, not a globe. Change my mind, right? In black and white, and then in the center there, I want to put like 2, 3, maybe 4 brilliant, like to do with like water being level, or maybe something, maybe gravity, maybe I haven't quite finalized that we see too far, the physics of water, etc. Anyway, so I asked people to send me in some awesome images that I might be able to use for that, and at last count I'd had 0 replies. I had none. So obviously I have this extensive reach here on this channel, and I would expect obviously to get hundreds and hundreds of letters. In fact, I should be employing someone to help me plow through the correspondence. But as of now, anyway, I am working on a new. So if you're inspired to send me 1 or 2 classic pictures that I could put on the banner, it's going to be a banner and a flyer. The flyer will be like, why does it matter and why the lie? Because those are the questions that
you're asked the most.
Yeah, and why, and if I can get someone to take some stuff away from them, that we're intelligently created and therefore not evolved apes, we're equal to the king, co-inheritors of all Earth, man-made climate change con. I'm trying to catch people with. Some people accept. I know that the climate change is a con, but this NASA thing, no. They can't prove they went to the moon, but I believe they went to the moon. They can't prove the Earth is spinning, but I believe the Earth is spinning. I can't prove this and that, but we can see ships going over the horizon. So job done.
So and then once you've done your banner, you're hoping to go and do a little stint in Oxford, right?
Yeah.
Which obviously, again, you'll extend that invitation for people to
come and join me.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time I extended an invitation for people to come and join me, I couldn't get anywhere near the stadium. There was just so many people were there. I never had any chance to do any activism. Okay, that's not true either, is it? Anyway, I hold the door open for all now. Then I say £2, please, to make them smile or laugh. Excellent. Lads are talking about navigation and sextants, which are all using like it's just we kind of have to laugh really at the state of humanity. I mean, we are. And it. I mean, because one of the things people will say is that are you saying that all these people are in on it in some kind? No, of course not. But all these people are brainwashed. Yes, and I don't mean that unkindly. We all come through the same school.
Brainwashed, or they've been
brainwashed.
They've been taught something or seen something. Because let's be honest,
who taught them something?
Well, I mean, just take the globe for instance.
Oh, what?
How many times do you see that image? Just and then it becomes what it is, and reality is what the vast majority believe it is. So And like when we went to the science museum, that whole section, and people were just like loving it. And the one man was teaching his children about that they, when they came back from the moon, was it the moon? I can't remember. They had to go into isolation because they might bring diseases back. And so it's more like all the stuff they've been told about it.
That's it. Hey, there's so much detail. It's the same with so many of these, false flags or whatever. There's so much detail that sits behind it that there's a whole story that an entire, you can get a degree or a master's degree or a professorship based on the story that was the edifice that was built to carry the narrative, as they did with COVID and so many other things.
Yes.
Ladies first, I always hold the door. It's a thing here in my part of Louisiana. The southern states are quite famous for their gentlemanly conduct in my spaghetti western watching world. Trinity 4 comes from they call me Trinity, the spaghetti westerns with Bud Spencer and what's his name? Bud Spencer and the other guy, Terence Hill. That was Anyway, so the section requires germination. Some seeds require stomach acids and full cycle in and out of another living thing. See, now that, Nathan, is profound, actually, isn't it? Because okay, let me read what Nathan said if you haven't got the chat. Germination. Some seeds require stomach acids and a full cycle in and out of another living thing to clear the protection layer on the seed. So this is the profound thought of the day. What if we are seeds, metaphorically speaking, seeds inside the belly of something that need to be stripped through stomach acids in order to come out the other side, go through into the next phase of that. Now, I'm not writing anyone off, but it may be the case that if you don't make this work, then you end up on the sort of dung pile and then get eaten again in order to kind of go through that process. But we could actually be some tiny, for something so massive. We could be some tiny thing inside of something much more magnificent. The Russian nested dolls, and in order to kind of work through the stuff that to mature, to come out. There's those coffee beans. The elephant eats the bean, and then once it's passed through the elephant, it's now ready for cleaning and then roasting and then coffee. Apparently, it's like highly sought after, very, very nice. And that may be true for you. Is that we are meant to kind of go through a maturation here, an evolution of the soul. Really, and it's a deep thing. Really, it's a deep thing, and I'm on that journey, but a long way. At the beginning of that journey, not trying to come here like I'm got that all knuckled down. No, I may never do. But the potential for you to be birthed from this life into something more really edifies the why would they lie? Why would they lie? Because they do not want you to become the perfect brew of coffee at the end of this.
Well, know your magnificence.
Yeah.
Know your potential to create actually heaven.
Yeah.
On earth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was more profound than what Gemini AI chat had to say, Nathan. Which is, while Earth is a sphere, more accurately a blown sphere. Don't you love it when you're like debating with someone or telling someone, the Earth is and they want to show you that they understand their model, and they go, oh, no, it's not a round, it's not a sphere, it's an oblate, and it's slightly squished at the top, and there's a little bit fat in the Neil deGrasse Tyson. We use Euclidean geometry for many practical purposes on its surface because locally the Earth appears flat. Wow, that's quite profound, anyway. But yeah, they'll say, well, locally it appears flat, but the ships are going over the horizon. Hello, Astro King. Nice to see you. Yes, we reside on a disco ball. Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, I'm really optimistic. Honestly, I mean, even though we acknowledge that the potential for there to be electronic interference, there to be maybe system temporary shutdowns or conflicts and certainly price hikes on the stuff that we need. I'm optimistic that this is designed as a test, and we should seek not to become a victim. We should take action. We should do what Rob did and get 14 chickens if we can. We should be out chopping a bit of wood, doing something like of a manly, healthy manly nature if we can.
And do the shadow work. Do the shadow work, because whilst you're in the savior, persecutor, or victim role, then you're playing into the hands of the. And so I can't say it enough, really. And we've been given with Scorpio full moon, Pluto in retrograde, and so much more. We're given opportunities to stop and go, okay, well, I can blame all this partner, government, experience, that it's all that fault. Then I'm obviously staying in that victim consciousness. But or it's like, well, where's the growth in it for me? What can I be responsible for? How can I see what's still living me rather than or the me that is living me? How am I out of alignment, or what's still lurking in the shadows that's keeping me from my most authentic self? I think that's such an important part. And Saturn in Aries is going to be giving us some more lessons, I think, in that respect. So
how do we meet those lessons?
Yeah.
Let's just say, because we don't know exactly what's coming, but just to say, for example, they pulled off another 2020 where, and I'm not saying the same storyline, but they pull off an event that has everybody. I know you could argue that they've already done that with the Ukraine, and
they are doing it all the
sorts
time.
of things.
It's whether you know.
So so let's just say that they pull off some, because that's kind of like the background rumble. That's we know there's this thing going on in Palestine, but we can still go to the disco, and so what if they do pull off something on the excuse me, on the very large scale? Are we going to be getting ourselves outraged? Actually, this is very topical for flat Earth. We've had obviously some kind of infiltration.
Just move it a little bit this way.
We had some kind of infiltration. Yeah, thanks, Hippie Shake. You can buy, folks are welcome to buy us a coffee. That we love coffee.
We
actually. What has happened? I mean, we've had the whole what do they call it? The final experiment observation of the sun, which, by the way, where's the 24-hour moon observation? Please ask your friends, put it on your Facebook feed or whatever. Think about it, guys. I actually pulled this up, and on the community note I posted this afternoon, just before this live, there's a picture there of a sun and a lemur and a moon and a lemur, and I want to try and find this, because I'm like, if you can see the sun and the moon in exactly the same place, albeit at different times and days, but they're in exactly the same place, the observer should be able to then see a 24-hour moon in Antarctica or in the Arctic. Anyway, the furore that's come from that, and a few people, jumping out of and starting to try and make flat Earth look ridiculous, which is of course ridiculous. What I think we can do, and obviously I'm speaking from my own perspective, but I think what we can do is we can end up putting our energy into that. We're giving those folks our energy, and as we did with, like, and rightfully so, no, I'm not like criticizing, but in COVID, what so many people did was, in our community, was to go and ride the government and stuff like that. You stop doing what you're going to do. Well, and there's people who believe, and I might be wrong on this, but there's people who believe that, oh, well, they actually planned to lock us down for 10 years. But because people were standing up, bollocks. People were not standing up. And those that did were, like, shut down hard. Sven will talk about that. He knows about that. I watched Jason getting, nicked. It turned into complete tyranny here. It just, the tyranny showed its face a little bit more clearly. Anyway, so the point, I guess, is that, after all that rambling, is that I think that my advice anyway to self and to those out there is to say, don't give it your energy, for heaven's sake. Don't give it your energy. That's what they're putting pins in your arm and saying, please notice us. Please don't. Like, you know what? No pins. I've got my own stuff. I've got my own chickens to kind of go and rear right
actually,
now.
That's very on point for the energy, because actually it was Chiron that went to Aries in March 2020 when the COVID thing is, and really that's healing the wound with Aries, is that taking your power back. It's all about the self, and it's the healing of the self and coming back to the self, and independence and not interdependence, because we are we want to be in connection with other, but not codependent. And so it's taking that power back. And of course now Saturn is going to move briefly into it, is going to retrograde, so it's going to move back again, but so it's again around self. How can I, and when I say power, I don't mean like how can I hit you over the head with a brick or whatever. It's more about how can I be in my authentic self.
So what I want to do is I want to show you something here. Oh, look at that. I didn't mean to show you that. That's really, what nonsense is that? I actually had a look at. I got distracted, so I only had a look at two of these, Burundi and Tanzania. I haven't looked at the Haiti one, but both Burundi and Tanzania. I may get these slightly mixed up. We all know that Tanzania had said, I've tested I used the COVID test, and I found that on a pawpaw and goat, and it's a joke. But Burundi, actually, they had gone along with the original lockdowns for about 2 months, or a short period of time, and then they'd gone, you know what, no, we're not going to bother with any of this. It's all a load of crap. We'll just take, and the president went on TV and drank ginger and lemon and something else, and the way that the newspapers refer to it as some concoction, rather than, he was taking using natural remedies, which is a good idea. So he actually, in 2020, fairly early in 2020, says, no, I'm not going along. This is bollocks. And he says it's bollocks, and then 1 month later, has heart problems very suddenly, gone. 1 month later. In Tanzania, John Magufuli, he went along with it for a while, actually, and it was only really when the needlecraft turned up that he said, you know what, not having it. In fact, the WHO had 3 or 4 representatives in the country who were their scamdemic team, and he declared them persona non grata and said they need to leave the country. They are no longer welcome. 1 month later, he also suddenly has heart problems, and it's the deputy president, the first lady who becomes the first ever lady president of the country, who comes on TV and announces that John has suddenly passed, but he's had years of heart trouble, and now she becomes the president, who is all send in the Pfizer people, let's bring all of that money and whatnot. So the Haiti one is, I think, probably going to be on a similar kind of thing. Anyway, that's not what thanks, Bon, for inspiring me to pull this up. Oh, that's easy doing, using a flat map, which is maybe more accurate than the globe. But he's just doing population numbers on that one. But this is what I wanted to show you, actually. This is the analemma of both sun and moon. No, this looks to be both. This looks to be both moon. This is only moon. That's another picture I have somewhere else, so I'll have to pick that up. But you get an analemma of the moon and the sun, and if they're in the same place, which I believe that they are from all of my studies, if they're in the same place, then there's no reason why you shouldn't see, particularly during the dark months, in the tropics, in the Antarctic. You should see them.
It's getting rather
dark in here.
Dark in the
Yeah. Kiwi down under. Don't get waylaid with the world. Stay loyal to self. That's brilliant advice, mate. Hope my accent isn't too bad. We have this funny story of being in Switzerland where I love doing accents.
He loves doing accents, but he doesn't do them very well. And not very well, you don't.
What are you talking about, man? That's my
South African.
Yeah. So we do. So we happened to be in Switzerland some years ago, and I jumped on this.
We had gone up on a train that you would normally go up on to ski down the slopes.
We weren't skiing.
We were there in the summer.
Right. And I'm kind of excited. Oh yeah, because you had a friend who had an apartment there, so we've got some free accommodation. And I jump on the train, and I'm just mucking around with the children, and I'm doing it in like an Aussie accent, and blow me. Fair dinkum, mate. There was 3 or 4 Aussie youngsters on a rugby tour or something like that, and they were looking at me like, "Who's he? Let's have a word with him." So yeah, that was a bit of a strange one, that. But lovely to have you here, mate, and I do appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, who programmed GBT? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know where I saw that. Well, it's dark on screen now. Yeah, I know. We have sunset here. Well, actually,
This is a rather dark room,
and
though.
we discovered that this one bulb wasn't working, so that hasn't really worked out. But yeah, celebrate dancing nurses. Oh man, I've been to the 5th dimension. Now Astro King has done some interesting things. So, yeah, he's definitely had some experiences. Anyway, I mean, it's interesting to see someone from New Zealand here. I didn't think, obviously, as a flat earther, we didn't think New Zealand really existed. So, it is my theory, by the way, that one of my theories that of course the coldest parts on our world are over there where they say you are, and yeah, there's there's ice down there. Yeah, there's ice down there. You got to go a little ways down there, but they've got a mission down there, and of course we know that the Brits did their best to make sure that they held this, because just like the Falklands, met someone the other day who went to South Georgia Islands, and but their jump off point was the Falklands, and then South Georgia is there. That's 3 days sailing. Would you believe that? That's 3 days sailing. Where was I going with that? Yeah, so I think that this is possibly the cold region. This huge map, and they haven't bothered to put any Antarctica on. There's so many anomalies with this. And I was saying it's easy when we, doing the wall map exercise that I showed you the other day. I mean, just now. That, Russia is nowhere near that size. You can try and do a hike across Russia on using Google Maps, and you'll discover that it's not that far, and it looks so massively oversized. Same with Greenland. Hey, it's about a tenth of that size or something like that. I assume the same with Canada. Anyway, these are the cold parts up here, and these are the cold parts down the bottom. So, who knows? But what I can say for sure is that we are, and like you said, don't get caught up in the world. The world is wanting so much your energy, and it wants to. And if we're to learn anything, if this knowledge is to give us anything other than, we know stuff that the majority of the world find impossible to comprehend. But we could also get lost in that. We can get lost in. I've got such powerful, and we know that some of the stuff is absolutely on the point, and we know that the majority of everything that we've been taught has been mistaught. So we do have, in a way, it's a little bit like you've got some jewels in your jewelry box, but you don't necessarily need to flaunt it, and you don't necessarily need to hold it, lord it over those who don't. But you can also get so caught up in your precious little stones, that you don't actually do the inner work, which I think is really banging on about it, but really the most important thing, because we're not here to change, pardon me, the government and the world. That's not the people change, and then eventually the systems change, because trust me, there's a lot of people, this for yourself, there's people in the shops who say to you, why are you not wearing a face nappy? We are our own worst enemy in that context, and so we should be okay with it being like, okay, look what we did to ourselves in 2020. Look what we did. I mean, the first time we turned up at the supermarket was in Norwich, Norfolk. We had a supermarket where there was a whole line of people, were all nappied up, and not everybody was nappied up in those first very early days, but some people were taking the government advice more seriously, and then until eventually, we were told you had to do it, and then the guy from the grocery counter could tell you couldn't come to the shop anymore because you weren't willing to subjugate. It was a bit of a long rant, wasn't it? Anyway, is Dean still here? Interesting that most of the information is in the northern hemisphere, and a little on the lower. Yeah, I mean, we don't even know. Honestly, I mean, I think that the way the compasses work and stuff, I've never really studied this one in detail, but it's like, to me, they say there's a northern and south. I heard Globers trying to say the other day that, can you explain why there's a northern and southern, compass on a flat Earth when it makes absolute sense on a globe? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense on a globe. But the idea that this could be, both could be north, top and bottom, and so you could orient this map, in upside down like they used to. There was a time when Australia and stuff was South Africa, and that was on the top. But the powers that be. That's another interesting conversation, and not for tonight. But the who we are and who the tribal people were on lands, and because I know obviously from first-hand experience how, say, tribal people in Africa have been tampered with by the West Europeans, but Europeans in their turn were tampered with by, they were a Celtic people, they were a Gaelic people, there were all these like tribal people that were on the land, and they were subsumed by what we might call Rome, I suppose. But then I was thinking earlier, like, where does that leave the orphan trains? Where does that leave the idea that there was a flood, there was an event, technology went away, simplicity was the way of survival, which may be our future, and then later a seeding of a certain group of people in order for them to be the minions of a system of control. It's too fantastical. And yes, like you say, don't get caught up in the world, because we'll never necessarily know all the answer to these questions. And for my part, they end up sometimes leaving you feeling like, oh, are we all on the same team? And if we're not all on the same team, then I have an enemy here that I need to be like, screw those people who kind of come into flat Earth and try to turn it all upside down. I don't want to give them any of my energy. And the same with the governments and all of these tricks that they're trying to play on us. I think we need to learn to be able to float through the
or be in flow of life and have a new relationship with life, because otherwise we're always thinking that life's not working out for us, and that's convenient, right? Because if life's not working out for you, what's the point? There's that resignation and apathy, and we remain in the victim.
Wellness. All right, wellness, Dave and Andrea and your lovely lady. I mean, I think you and the same, you being the lovely lady. So Hippie's aunt and uncle live in Brittany. They weren't allowed to go to the shops. They had to go to a collection point to collect their order for food. We stayed in Brittany.
We were told by the people
a few years ago now, and the people, they lived in a small village, with like 2 shops, a mechanic.
They had to have paperwork.
To leave the home, and it was next level. Maybe not as bad as Aussie, and I don't know whether there's a debate between the Kiwis and the Aussies as to whether who was worse. What's that? What was her name? Jacinta Hearn or something like that. I don't know. I forget her name now. But anyway, it's all water under the bridge. Just don't worry about that. It's all past now. Hey, we don't have to think about it anymore. Well, I like you say, I think the most important thing is us, and all they want, what they want is to have you in their court playing their game.
Blindly.
So as much as possible, I try and keep a low profile, and not draw attention to myself by these unfortunate dogs of the system, It's not me calling them dogs, it's the royals. That's what they call the police dogs. It's Kathy's here. Hey, Kathy Broughton. We did it on Saturday and not Friday because of reasons, and it's interesting. We don't know whether we were like, oh, that's happened, that we've now got to do it on Saturday. It's a different day for people. It's a different time, and maybe we have one or two new, and we seem to have had one or two new.
Yeah, maybe people can
names here
comment
today,
and say what they'd prefer, if there's a preference. Yeah, we just did it because we had things that were important, that we were flexible with it. So, but yeah, it's good to be here, and obviously to feel like we're gathering.
Yes, we want to gather. Yeah, that reminds me. Yeah, all these wars are about harvesting the leftovers of the carnage created. Interesting, squirrel. Yeah. Hi, Kathy. I was talking to AI. It started to text me, then deleted the text because it said it's not very accurate. You don't have a preference, Kathy? Okay. Just like the witch hunts of the 15th century, the church eliminated the wives of the Templars that left for the Crusades and then took the land. I tell you what, the trauma that has been wrought upon the feminine, and the masculine, of course, but wow, what has been done.
The witch wound actually has been coming up a lot in astrology, actually, and it is something that has currently been very prominent. As far as I understand, we've moved through a lot of it, and as a consequence, people being women, might feel that they've got a slightly more fuck it kind of attitude. I'm just gonna give my medicine or give my essence, because that has been, there has been certain energies that have been kind of working on that. It's in particular Lilith, for instance, which is in Scorpio, which is an interesting place for that to be. So yeah, I think that we as the feminine carry that the persecution of the witch. We were talking about that the other day. That we can talk about midwives and healers and herbalists and anybody that was doing incredible work that needed to be shut down. And of course we carry that in our lineage. And every time we're willing to face those shadowy bits of ourselves, we're healing backwards and forwards. So
if reincarnation, then we went through those things already ourselves. And some would say all these things are happening sort of simultaneously. Who knows? This is the most wild, incredible thing. We all get out alive. We obviously not in the physical form, but I truly believe we get out alive. We go out and we'll be chuckling when we get to the other side and go, damn, But I took it all so seriously. And,
I think that that's something that comes up in terms of coaching people or mentoring people. Our relationship with life is shifted when we have these experiences young, and we see that in Zizi, where he's just got this spark and this innocence and this joy and this wonder and this curiosity, and we lose that, and our relationship with life it's tough. We need to survive. We can't have what we want. There's all those things, and it really doesn't have to be that way. So it's a return and a reclamation of yourself, and a remembrance of who you are, and then a whole new relationship with life that is available.
Kiwi says that's how I think that we feel like we've been caught up in the past through maybe reincarnation. Hippie does not believe that we die. She's had an out-of-body experience, so that's awesome. And I've listened to enough. Obviously, I had my DMT experience, but I've listened to enough to be quite as certain as perhaps I can be in the living. Certainly I believe it, and so powerfully so that I would say it to people without any inner, like if I was selling you some product and I'm not, but no, this is absolutely my honest assessment of that. And you know, and it's not, it's neither good nor bad. It is what it is. And you know, and I really don't want to think in terms of, oh well, if you don't do it in this lifetime you're screwed or whatever. I don't think it has to be like that. And
No, if anything, I think it's not necessarily about being present, but it's more about like about trusting and being in surrender of actually life that wants to move through you. You know, we're learned very young to try and be in control and to try hard, and you know, to be really fixated on the outcome and the end and where am I going to, where am I getting to, and am I doing it right, am I doing it wrong, and really just to kind of know that it's all as it should be.
Yeah, yeah, and if we've got stuff that's triggering us in ways, then you know these are really just pointers to go, if you want to go.
We have free will. It's an invitation. It's always an invitation. That's what I love about astrology, is it shows you the invitations that are available to you, and it shows you, you know, where you might be out of alignment and where the potential to be in alignment is. So yeah, I think, you know, life is our biggest teacher, and it's offering us that all the time. It's offering us the mirror, and we can either you know, lean into it, or we can be in resistance, which obviously starts to feel like a struggle.
Yeah. So Squirrel was talking about his experience with mushrooms and other things. But yeah, I like what you say there, hippie. Not being scared of death. You know, that was one of the powerful things about my DMT experience, was it washed away fear of death, because you know
well, there's a saying.
Then, you know, when you got children, babies, you kind of like, you don't want to leave them in any quick order, right? But at the same time,
there's a saying: once you are okay with death, then you can live.
Yeah, and that's what I want to say. I think then you can, you know, you can learn to love life, even though, because it's meant to be. It's not. You didn't come here to have like a laying in the park and, you know, maidens feeding you grapes, and you know that's not what we've come here for. You know, on the other side, I think that there might be.
Well, if people want that to be their life, where they want maidens to feed them grapes, then I say go for it. That's the life you want to create for yourself. I don't think there's any limitations. It's only us that set limitations on what we can have and what we can't have. It's all available to us, and if that's what someone desires, then hey, go for it.
Do we have any grapes?
No. We do.
Ah, yeah. I noted your comment there, Rob, about the South Atlantic being vast. I mean, one of my early bits of research was, you know, the shipping guys who were talking about, you know, not being able to keep, you know, going 10 days late.
Does that help any?
10 days late on their sail. I'd say really very well. Yeah, that's made a huge difference.
Oh, I can see you. You're not someone in the shadow.
Okay. Well,
Very Scorpion.
yeah, so he said he served there. I assume Navy. Admiralty charts are not correct, either east or west. It's funny, it's like when you're in that industry, they'll go, yeah, well, we know this, so what we do is we account for this and we allow for that, and the reason for this is something, and that's it. You're taught that on day one, and you never question it. Yeah. So, starting collect Amanita 2 days ago. Okay. All right, 7-year cycle. We enjoy that. Oh, that's better apparently. The lighting. Do you think it'll help us getting a few more donations tonight? Maybe. You never know. Get a chance your arm, you know. I have been doing a little bit of gardening, Squirrel, and others. This last week, I had a few days of, well, not days, but like half days of gardening, which has been nice, you know.
It's
And
Dave's
a bit
gym.
fun,
Gardening is his gym.
and I was thinking, like down on my knees, and you know, I'm thinking like how cool I'm getting to work out, you know, and stretching my body and what have you, and getting paid for it at the same time. So I do like that. But I know your NDE was that when you fell out of the tree? Squirrel had a bad fall many years ago. Anyway, Asra King's getting into the two body stuff, and it's the second son. I have yet to see that for myself, but I have seen pictures that suggest the second son. But well, I would like to see that. We were seeing a second rainbow today. We were playing with water hose pipe, and Zizi was very excited to see a second rainbow. So, well, on that note, I think that we might, yeah, love gardening. Yeah, gardening's great. Where are we next week? Are you asking me that? You asking me that, Squirrel? Well, we're here next week. Actually, we'll be here, and I think we might, you know, revert to Friday. It doesn't make a big difference to us really. You know, Friday or Saturday is fine, but we'll probably go Friday. I'll let you know in due course if it's anything other than Friday. But it'd be nice to see you all. Yeah, so we'll be here. If you, but we're over in near Oxford. So, yeah. Until next time, Sven. Yeah, and Sven. Yeah, that was a bit of a fall. 40-foot cheapers creepers. I think he broke his back.
Wow.
It was bad.
Wow.
Yeah. But you know, the man soldiers on, and he's a legend. So, you were weeding today. Well, I want to go and smoke some weed. So it's been lovely chatting to you, and we'll look forward to next week.
Yeah, and everyone take it easy with the full moon in 2 days' time.
But if you want to come visit Squirrel, yeah, we're there, you know, but we can chat. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We really, really appreciate it. It's actually been a nice, moving chat, and the opportunity to exchange some thoughts.
And obviously, we extend that if anybody wants to come on and chat and share, then they just let us know. We are working on.
If it's just like half an hour, you know, or whatever, to share some ideas and thoughts or bounce some ideas around, then we can arrange that. Sorry about last time, Nathan.
Yeah, we have we're ironing out the issues we had. Well, the learning curve we're having.
Other Nathan, not.
A learning curve we're having about doing Zoom through OBS, but we should have that all sorted for next week. So, yeah, if anybody would like to come and chat, we'd love that. And
dog's licking his buttocks, right? Sorry. I mean.
No, they do not.
Oh no.
Yeah, Billy.
He stopped.
Yeah, Billy, you don't want to be on camera. Only a boy would show a dog.
No. I'm just trying to have a little bit of fun. Well, boy dogs.